Welcome to another episode of Sanctuary Radio. This is a podcast brought to you by Sanctuary Recovery Centers. All right, guys. Hey, we're back. Sanctuary Recovery Centers. I know you guys have missed us. We took a little winter break. I mean, I wouldn't call it a break because we've been extremely busy. We've opened up 2 brand new facilities, the Rose Garden facility and our Bell House. Amazing facilities, 10-bed residentials. In order to do that, we've had to bring on a bunch of amazing staff members. We've added so many talented individuals with a passion for recovery who've came on board with the Sanctuary team. You guys hear me say it all the time. Recovery is a team sport, and working at Sanctuary is a team sport as well. We have a 3rd property coming online as well, but we got a bunch of amazing things that are in store. We have amazing guests. Old timer OG, I would say, 20, 30 plus years. I can't even remember, he's got so many years. His name's Keith. The episode is tremendous. You gotta see it. And here we are, another episode of Sanctuary Radio, and I got my co-host, Hailey. What's up, Hailey?
What's up, everybody?
I mean, you're in Oklahoma. What's the weather like out there?
It's snowing. It's cold. Yeah, I'm definitely not made for this type of weather.
I mean, are the kids on a snow day?
They were on a snow day yesterday, but they had to go to school today.
I bet you were real happy about that.
Actually, yesterday was pretty fun. We took him sledding behind our Polaris and on a trash can lid, and I actually got on and got tossed around a little bit. So.
Okay. I mean, that sounds like fun. I mean, I'm good with the snow until I get cold. And once I get cold, it's not fun anymore. So I'm not a snow guy.
Exactly.
I'm more of a 5-star hotel resort type guy in the summer. That's really my jam. I think we all know that. But we have our special guest here today. We have Keith Simpson on the show, and welcome, Keith. So here he is. And, you know, every time we have someone on the show, I think it's always important, you know, like, how do we get here? We know what our podcast, Hailey, and what Sanctuary's message is. Our message is to share hope across all the media platforms and bring not only just all-stars in the recovery community, but also other treatment centers to come on so we can start to break the stigma that we're, you know, against each other and try to bring everybody together as a team. But this episode, we got a recovery all-star on here. Keith, come on, Keith. Let's not be shy, okay? We're going to break into the ego here for a second, all right?
Okay,
How long you been sober for, brother?
40 years.
40 years.
Whoa.
As long as I've been alive.
Yeah, I'll be 30 this year, so he's got 10 years on me.
He's got 10 on. He's still got 10 on you. And, you know, in order to get on the show, you know, we get a lot of people, Hailey, that reach out to us all the time. They want to be on the show. But, you know, this guest, Keith, being on the show today, you know, we were brainstorming about the next guest on the show, and Yolanda, you know, the director here at Sanctuary, big shout out to her and the whole Sanctuary family. And she said, you know what, I got the perfect guy for you. His name's Keith. He's been around. He's an all-star in the recovery community. And, well, Keith, we play phone tag for a couple weeks.
Yeah, we did.
Yeah, we play phone tag for a couple. You know how I am with answering my phone. It's hit or miss.
Yeah, we play phone tag all the time.
Yeah,
so.
it's hit or miss sometimes. But we were able to connect today and get him out here to share his message, experience, strength, and hope. And, you know, this is going to be something for a lot of people to hear. You know, it's hard to really think about in recovery. You know, when I came into recovery, Keith, it was, you know, the whole one day at a time. But shit, it was 5 minutes at a time. 30 seconds at a time. One breath at a time, right? And so to see someone with 40 years and everything that comes with it, you know, he wrote a book, Hailey. We're going to talk about the book at the end. And he's going to share his successes and his failures and the things that's going on, because it's important for people to hear that just because we're sober now and we've got years, life isn't always just rainbows and butterflies and sunshine and all those things. Sometimes it's Oklahoma and snow. You know?
Exactly. That's okay.
But every journey starts somewhere, Keith. So you're from Indiana, South Bend. I mean, Fighting Irish.
Oh, yeah.
Is that your team?
Oh, gotta be, yeah.
What about that movie, Rudy?
Yeah.
That's one of my favorite. You ever seen the movie Rudy?
Yes. Oh, we've talked about this before.
Tearjerker.
We've had a few people from... How many people have we had on the show from Indiana? At least 3 now, right?
At least 3. We got OG Ethan Ogden. I know he's from Indiana. Who else? Ryan Turpin was from Indiana. Is he from Indiana?
Actually, Michael Dixon was.
Oh, that's right. Too. Yeah, our clinical director. He's from Indiana as well. But I want to hear a little bit about, your childhood, Keith. Growing up, you've been adopted twice. You bounced around, twice by the same family. I'd like to hear a little bit about that. Bounced around from foster homes. We're talking middle class in the 50s. So why don't you take a moment, Keith, just to kind of share, what, childhood was like for you?
It was actually perfect. The 50s was a great time to grow up. My dad was a cop. My mom had twin boys that died at birth, and she had a mental breakdown, and so my dad made arrangements to adopt me, and I guess that was his best idea at the time. My mom took one look at me and thought I was such a cute little girl because I had all this black hair. And then it came time to change my diapers, and she's like, "What is this?"
Right.
A hold up.
Take it back. I don't want it.
I want a little baby girl.
So her mom pretty much took care of me there for about the first year. And they finally had to get me back to foster care because my mom was in and out of the hospital. And then when I was 7, they somehow or another found me and adopted me.
They're like, okay, let's give this another run.
Right.
Yeah.
Third time's the charm. So I better make it work the second time. Who knows where I'll go the third.
Right.
But,
and so you grew up in the 50s, and your father's a cop, and mom had some traumatic events, and she struggles a little bit at times, right? And you're a bigger guy, so I assume you played sports in school. What sports did you play?
Oh, we played sports 24/7, 12 months a year where I grew up. So when I got into school, I played grade school football and baseball and basketball. And
well, the Hoosiers. I think everyone from Indiana's got to play basketball at least once.
But I was only like 6 feet tall, and the high school I went to had a lot of 6'6", 6'8" guys.
Oh, you were short?
I was a little guy.
Oh man, okay, all right. And I know we had an opportunity.
Funny.
We had an opportunity, Keith, to Hailey. Actually, what sports you play? Oh, you're a rodeo. You play rodeo.
I played basketball and I rodeo.
Oh.
Yeah, and then I played sober softball for a little while and volleyball
until you got that. You had a hamstring injury. What injury did you have?
Exactly.
You got a bad. So hey,
no. I never had any injuries, but I played. I rodeoed mainly. That was year round in Arizona, which other states that have cold winter, they don't rodeo year round, so they have more time for sports. But yeah, I just rodeoed. So
yeah. And so, now here we are, you're playing sports and you're doing all these things, and, you grow up in Indiana. And when we had an opportunity to kind of talk before, you explained a little bit about being, a little bit of a loner, and you described yourself as a runner. So why don't you kind of share, why you would label yourself as a loner and a runner?
Well, the Simpson family, they were a great family. I don't disrespect them at all. It was a big family, and I was Lester and Lorena's adopted kid, which kind of set me apart.
right.
I was blessed. I'm a voracious reader. I was reading by the time I was 4 and 5 years old. So when I got back with the Simpson family, they thought it was just remarkable that this young kid read everything. I'd read the paper, and I just never fit. I was their adopted kid. They were all short, fat redheads, and I was tall and lanky and had black hair. And
Yeah.
they weren't real sports conscious, and I was very sports conscious. And
Right.
So you were like the black sheep right away.
oh yeah, I started
Literally.
out that way.
And so, when we have these feelings, right, of, low self-worth or not being liked or not being a part of, ultimately when I look over my own life and I'm always wanting to fit in and being a people pleaser and, seeking validation through others, when I start to use, that becomes the solution to those feelings and those emotions. And then I started to attach drugs and alcohol to the way I feel, and then that takes me down a road. And you went down that same road, which we're going to talk about that road.
Dark
path. Super dark path. But let's jump to the first time that you drank, right? Because when we look at that first time, I love when I get some new sponsees, right? And I'm like, okay, let me ask you a question. Why? Why do you keep doing what you're doing? Because obviously you can't tell me that it's been fun living in an abandoned house, getting high with a candle with no power in the winter, right? Like that ain't fun, right? So it's not fun. We can look at that. We can look at the consequences in your life. So why do you do what you do? And most of them don't have an answer, right? And you won't really figure the why out until you work a 4-step and you really start digging into your inventory and seeing all those things. Exactly. So when we get to the first time that you drink, so why don't you kind of share the story of, your first time drinking?
Like I said, I was always alone. I would go wander around in the woods. I go out in the country on my bike. I was at a place called Rum Village Park, of all places.
Okay.
And there were 3 chicks and 2 guys down below me on the hill by the swing sets, and they were drinking beer. And this one girl said, "Hey, you want a beer?" And I thought, I don't know about that. Yeah.
As a matter of fact, I do.
She was cute. I was up for an adventure, so we went down there, or I went down there, and we drank all the beer. And they said, "This was fun. I want to do it again sometime." And I thought,
right.
Again, why are you stopping?
Shit, we're just getting warmed up.
And
right.
And for the first time that I remembered, it was like I was going home, and Ozzy and Harriet were there waiting for me, and Dave and Ricky wanted to know where I'd been.
Yeah.
Wasn't anything like that, but that's what I created in my imagination that first time. I can be okay. I can be somebody.
Right.
And I remember I went home, my mom, she's like, "Have you been drinking?" And I was like, "No." And she started wailing on me. She said, go to your room. Your dad will talk to you when he gets home." And I was like, okay, if I could just go to my room, I'll be fine.
Yeah, I'll be okay. Haley, how many times you came home, Mom said, "Have you been drinking?"
Oh, my mom already knew we were drinking.
Yeah.
She was that mom.
Yeah,
I just
cool
had to
mom.
ask permission, and we were, exactly. And we were out in the woods partying or in the desert. So.
Yeah, I mean, I have cool mom and cool dad. Well, cool dad, strict mom, but I remember one time I used to sneak out all the time, and I remember I was sneaking back into the house drunk one night, and we had these stairs that went to the upstairs, right? And I was drunk, and I took the turn in the dark. I took the turn a little bit too hard, took a hard right, and I banged my head right into the corner of the wall, and I split my whole head and had to go get stitches. I still got a scar on the top of my head. But when we start to look at this now, so now you're in school and it's a different time period. You're playing sports, you're drinking, you're finding some acceptance through sports, but you're still a loner when you're not on the football field. And, the drugs were a little different back then, right?
Oh, way different.
And they had different names and different things. And so why don't you share what it was like playing football and White Crosses, Black Beauties, right? I know these names from my dad, Quaaludes, all those different types of things. I mean, that's the same generation. So why don't you share what high school was like for you?
I was real good in high school. I was good at sports. I was real good academically.
You got straight A's, right?
Yeah, I did. And I was always befriending the ugly kids, the weak kids. It's like I was their friend. When we go to for lunch, the lunchroom, all the jocks would sit here, all the cool kids would sit here, all the rich kids would sit there.
Mm-hmm.
I would sit in the back with all the misfits. And after I got into recovery, I realized that I was actually using them
to feel better
about me. So,
right.
But I didn't like the way people treated them, and if I wasn't big and smart, they'd have probably treated me the same way.
Right.
But I never wanted to be in school. I wanted to be somewhere else, be somebody else. And so I daydreamed a lot, but I like I said, I was gifted academically.
Yeah, I mean, straight A's, that's hard to do. Hailey, what was your GPA in high school?
Oh God, I didn't even have a GPA.
What do you mean?
I was expelled, suspended up until my junior year when I moved to Texas to rodeo with my cousins. That's when I got my grades up and I started to exceed in school. But before that, no, I didn't even have a GPA. I was expelled.
What type
from
of
school.
crowd did you hang out with? You hang out with the potheads? You hang out with the jocks? I mean,
I hung out with the cool kids.
Oh,
I was
sorry.
definitely the cool kid too.
Oh, my bad. Okay.
But I can relate to going to the odd kid like I would sit wherever I wanted. I knew everybody in my class. I was friends with everybody.
Well, there's only 20 kids in your graduating class in Wickenburg.
Yeah, it's not that small, but yeah.
Okay, my bad. Go ahead.
That's
I didn't mean to cut you off.
I'll let it slide.
No, I didn't mean to cut you off. All right. So you sat with everyone, right? And so I think that when we get in, we all have a passion for recovery. And, for me, I think that passion and that willingness to be of service and to help others and to be supportive to the ones less fortunate or the ones who are struggling. I think for me, I've always had that in me. I've always been a leader, but I've always led in the wrong direction. And so today, I'm trying to lead in the right direction by example but with love and tolerance.
Right.
And, so I think that passion that we all have started long before we actually got in this field. So finally, you daydreamed a lot, Keith, and you wanted to be somewhere else. And so finally, when you graduated from high school, it was time to be someone else and to go somewhere else. So you moved to Chicago, and this is where your life gets crazy, right?
Oh, it's interesting is what it got.
Okay, super interesting. So you've been shot, motorcycle clubs, the whole drug game, the whole nine. You're super qualified to, have your chair in Alcoholics Anonymous as well as your chair on this podcast. I'll tell you that. So when you moved to Chicago, why don't you share, what that was like? Because you're in the bar business and strip clubs and massage parlors. You're speaking my old language. Okay. My wife hates this, but I tell directions by strip clubs. I'm like, I know where that's at. By the candy store.
Oh,
you mean by Bourbon Street?
I had to explain to my kids that the candy store is not actually candy. So now they're like, can we go to the candy store? They want to go there even more. No.
So you moved to Illinois, Keith, and just qualify yourself through that time period for a few minutes here.
Well, I hooked up with this couple. They were Auschwitz survivors, and they owned a pawn shop, a pool hall, and a whorehouse.
Okay.
And Jack kind of took me under his arm, and he taught me the pawn business and the jewelry business, but his bodyguard, if you will, the guy named Larry, and Larry was deep into the prostitution business. He was a pimp, and they all call me the kid. It's like, hey, kid, do this, kid, do that, kid, go pick this up. And it was exciting for a young guy, for an 18-year-old kid.
Yeah, right out of high school.
All these 30, 35-year-old guys, carrying guns and shooting each other. And there was always drugs. There was always women. And through Jack, I was always making money. And so I bought this place, and it was a little corner bar. And I turned it into a strip club. And then there were 4 one-bedroom or 2-bedroom apartments upstairs that were rented out, and I turned it into 6 rooms I rented by the hour.
Oh, by the hour, we know what those are.
And if you got an innkeeper's license in Illinois, you're free.
Okay, all right. So
that's awesome.
Yeah, so here we are with that lifestyle, right? And and I think in the beginning, right, like in my head, I'm like thinking like that sounds pretty fun, right? And like, so we had some good times in recovery, right? I mean, in addiction. Like we had some good times and it was fun. Yeah. And there was some of those times, but those times had ended 20 years before I found recovery. And anytime that my brain tells me that it's a good idea to try to pursue those elusive fun times, I think that I can go back to what year, Hailey, do you remember? 1997, sophomore year in high school when it was fun as hell, right? But that was over 20 years ago now, and I haven't been able to get back to that time. And so, you're in this industry, and you're making money, and you're selling dope, and you got the girls, and everybody knows you. You developed a name, ego's on hit, but there starts to be some consequences that start to come with that lifestyle. So why don't you share, Keith, a little bit about the consequences from that period of time?
Well, a lot of them are bullet holes and knife scars and broken teeth and broken noses. And these are the prettiest teeth and the straightest nose money can buy. But everything just, it ebbs and flows in that world. You either got too much or not enough. You never really find a place where you can relax.
Yeah.
But things broke real bad, and a couple people got killed, and I grabbed my girl of the day, if you will.
Yeah, I grabbed my Tuesday, and we just
said, come on, let's go to Florida. And we got to Florida and went to my friend's house in Florida, and he says, hey, the feds were here looking for you last week. So we just kept straight on to South America and went down to Bolivia.
We're going to keep on moving then.
Well, yeah, if you keep moving, they can't find you, right?
Yeah, I mean, believe me, I spent at least the first from like 18 to when I went to prison the first time, I steadily had a warrant. Like I didn't have a driver's license for 5 years because I could never pay a fine. I was taking side streets everywhere I went. And, but that's what comes with the lifestyle. And, if I was like this clinical dude, and which I'm not, but there's like three major questions that like clinicians would ask you. And if you could answer yes to all three of these things, then you're probably one of us, a drug addict, right? And they would say, continued use despite negative consequences, check. Poor control over stopping when you want to stop, check. Poor control over the amount you use when you use. If you could answer all three of those things, then you're probably one of us.
Right.
And so when you look at that lifestyle, Keith, and everything that you went through, because that was an 8-year time period. It wasn't
No, it wasn't.
just an overnight. It wasn't a long weekend. It wasn't, this is an 8-year period where you're in the prostitution business. You have a bar in Chicago. You're running around with the crowd, right? And you're selling dope, and you're doing all these things. And people, what comes with that lifestyle is death, right? And close calls, and eventually prison, right? And so you bounce out to South America? I mean, what was that like?
Oh, it was awesome. I mean, I was a pocket full of money and a beautiful woman on my arm. And
what did you do?
Right.
What did you do?
We partied. I was looking for a new Coke Connect. That's why we went to Bolivia.
Okay.
And I remember I woke up one time and there was this girl in bed with me, and it wasn't Maggie, and I was like, whoa. And I looked out the window, and I could see the ocean, and I could see the sun coming up to the right, and I thought, something's wrong here. So I called down below, and I had them send me up some tea and a periodical, and I looked, and it was Caracas, and I said, Caracas, that's in Venezuela. Last time I remember, I was in Brazil. And I called my attorney, and he's like, where in the hell are you? Your wife's been calling me every day.
Your first call was to the attorney. Hey,
well,
brother,
yeah,
I'm in a different country. I'm not sure what happened last night. Just be on standby because I'm probably going to need you.
I'm going to need you. Yeah. He was always well paid.
Yeah.
But
you told me in the beginning there's three things that you always got to make sure you get paid. What were those three things?
Well, you got to pay your doctor, your lawyer, and your bondsman.
Yeah.
Always on
Oh,
time.
yep.
Never write them a check. Always give them cash.
That's right. Yeah, we
That's
know
funny.
we know that to be true too, right, Hailey?
Well, I've never been to prison, but
you've never been
I've dealt
bonded
with my
out. You've never
family.
been bonded out.
No, but I bonded my sister out plenty of times, so I know how it goes.
There you go.
Yeah.
Oh,
There
you're
you go.
leading by example, right?
Yeah. And
Exactly.
and you want to know what's crazy about it is, I have been bonded out a million times. Thank you, Mom and Dad. Shout out to them. But the craziest part about it is the name of my bonds company was Sanctuary Bail Bonds.
Oh, geez.
Wow,
Yeah.
that's crazy.
Is that odd?
Yeah, right? And it's pretty funny. I mean, we can look at the big book, you said, is it odd or, is it odd or is it God, right? And then immediately we're both big book dudes. And so I'm already thinking nothing happens in God's world by mistake, right? And he's been there this whole time, but my actions weren't aligning with his actions. So I didn't see that awareness. And he was trying to tell me this whole time, there's a better place, there's a sanctuary, there's a refuge, there's a safe place, there's a way, but I didn't see it.
Right.
And so I had to do an 8-year prison sentence and find it in that time period, but it was always there. Sanctuary bail bonds, but we're living in a different kind of sanctuary world today, and that's the recovery center. And so how long are you in South America for?
About a year and a half, something like
Just
that.
bouncing around.
Yeah. We saw all the sights, and it was before the big cocaine thing happened. So everybody was pretty freewheeling down there. You know, if you were an American, they figured you got money. You know, and they take one look at Maggie and say, "Whoa, you know,
Oh, this guy's doing pretty
let's
good."
invite them over to dinner." You know.
Yeah, they're invited.
Right.
And so it's one big party for a year and a half. Were you worried about the feds finding you? Were you just living carefree, or you were just living?
Just bouncing.
Bouncing
all
around.
the time. I mean, we would check into a like you said, 4 or 5 star resort, pay for a week, and then after 3 or 4 days, started looking up and down the coast for another
Like,
hotel.
all right, where are we going to go next?
And back then, nobody even asked for ID. If you had cash, you were king.
Yeah, it didn't even matter.
So
Right.
a criminal don't have a prayer today with all this electronic stuff. You know. I was telling my wife the other night, I said, you know, it used to be you get in trouble in Phoenix, you moved to Tucson and you were good for 6 months, you know, before they filed all the paperwork, sent all the paperwork, somebody read all the paperwork. Now it's instantaneous.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I mean, it's right away. And they always find you. The marshals, especially, they're good. You ever been hunted down at all, Hailey, by the marshals, Dog the Bounty Hunter, Beth, any of the crew?
No.
Oh, okay. Just checking. All right.
I've never even had anyone kick my door in, nothing. Like, I feel so innocent compared to you guys.
And that's why we have you on the show. You got to balance us out.
Exactly.
Right. Okay. And so,
Exactly.
And so you end up finally at some point in time, you move back. You're planning to go to San Diego, right? So finally the run was over. And why don't you share how you ended up in Tucson?
I had a cab over camper. It was an old truck that I smuggled dope in that had a big living camper on the back, and had a trailer with a couple of motorcycles in it. And we were going across I-10, and the drive shaft started clunking in Tucson the day before Thanksgiving in 1974. And we pulled into this place called Holiday Inn Travel Trailer Park, and there was a sign on the door that said, "Happy Holidays, see you Monday." And I said, "Oh, it's a sign."
Yeah.
So we unloaded a motorcycle, went to Nogales, and on the way back, we stopped at a place called Madeira Canyon. And I was sitting there on the edge of this mountain looking down over the valley, and I thought, God, I just want to stay right here by this tree. I never want to move. And Maggie was, "Come on, we got to go to San Diego. We got to get the truck fixed. We got to do this. We got to do that." And I'm like, "Look, everything out there will sting you, burn you, or bite you. I'm staying."
Yeah,
And
I'm in.
she's like, "What? You don't want to go to San Diego? We got that condo." I said, "I don't care. I'm just staying right here."
And that was it.
Right.
And,
That was it.
And then you stayed there, you know, and what's the saying, what do they always say? You come on vacation, leave on probation, come back on a violation, stay on a revocation or something like that. I mean,
Something like that.
that's pretty much what happens. And so during this period of time, though, you know, you get married, right? You end up getting married and you're in Tucson. And what type of work are you doing when you're in Tucson?
Selling drugs.
Okay. All right. Still self-employed.
Well, I know I bought a pawn shop.
Yeah, you're in the pawn shop game.
And everything was going pretty good. I mean, Tucson back in the 70s was like, I don't know, back in the 60s, there was this poster of a turquoise and white microbus with this hippie chick with some Daisy Dukes with her foot up on a pile of pot. And it said, "Try Tucson first."
Oh, yeah.
And that was Tucson back in the 70s. 4th Avenue, you could get high just walking up and down the sidewalk. Everybody was selling dope.
Yeah, because it was like that.
I don't think much has changed. I was going to say, I don't think it's changed too much.
Nah, I don't think it has, but, you know, because back then, you know, Tucson it's 2 hours away from Phoenix, right? And it was where a lot of people went to escape, and it was
2 hours away from the border.
2 hours away from the border. I've been to
Right.
Nogales several times, and I used to park at the McDonald's and walk over from Nogales. And so when we look at this period of time, and I hear you say pawn shop, right? And you've had several pawn shops. And so I am a pawn shop dope fiend. when I'm when I get high. And I got a bone to pick with you, dude.
Ah.
Why do you guys only pay $30 for everything? Do you know when we're dope sick and you're just like, you know what?
Yeah, we know.
Yeah, you know. All right, that's what I thought. I knew it, Hailey. I knew they knew. And I'm the type of guy in addiction that every time I pawn something, I tell myself another delusional thought that I'm coming back for it.
I'm gonna get it back. I swear to God, I'll be back.
Yeah, I swear to God, I'll be back.
You make it $40.
Yeah, right. And one time I pawned a 64-inch or 2-inch TV, right? And the dude's like, look, he's like, I'll give you $400, I'll buy it from you. And I was like, nah, just give me $50, I'll be back. I want to make sure it's low enough where I can get this thing back. I'm coming back for it. Never came back for it. Could have got the $400, only got the $50. When I went to prison, my wife was finding pawn shop tickets and jackets and every single thing that I had. Yeah, you may. I don't know if you had one in the valley, because if you did,
not up here. No.
Oh, okay. All right.
And I didn't like TVs. I like jewelry. Give me jewelry.
If you see the watch he's got on, I don't want to put your business on blast. He's wearing a Rolex. He's got very nice jewelry. We talked watches for about 10 minutes. That's why we were late, Hailey. I apologize.
Bet you did. Yeah,
you know how I am.
You did.
And you know how I am with the watches. But here we are now. You're kind of in one place for a little bit, and you're in Tucson, but you're still in the game. You're in the pawn shop industry. You're doing all these things, and it doesn't matter where you go. You're the problem. We know that.
Yeah.
And so what ends up happening during this period of time, because you get sober, because remember, you're sober 40 years. So this is about the time where, the gift of pain and desperation, you wave the white flag, you surrender. This is about that time. So why don't you share what leads up to walking into that first meeting?
I had moved up here. I got busted down there in Tucson, and I got 5 years probation. So I told Maggie, I said, come on, we're going to Phoenix. We got to get away from all these people. And we came up here to Phoenix and, bought a nice little house. And I was working construction. We bought a pottery place out at Scottsdale and Shea, basically. And that was her gig for the day. She and the baby would go out there and sell pottery. And, life was really good for a minute. And
you mean literally like a minute?
Yeah. Well, it seemed like it was going to last forever, but it's just for a minute. And I came home from work one day, and Maggie wasn't there, and I thought, well, she must be at the shop, and she wasn't at the shop. And a neighbor called and said, hey, Anitra's over here. Why don't you come and get her? Maggie was supposed to be here 2 hours ago, so I went and got my daughter, and come to find out, Maggie took off with the ice cream man.
She took off with the milkman?
No, the ice cream man.
Oh, like literally, that's not a figure of speech?
No. I was walking back with Anitra, and she pointed at the ice cream truck, and she said, Dave's truck. And I said, what? She said, Dave's truck.
You're like, who is Dave? Yeah, who the?
So we went over and unloaded all the ice cream out of it and put it in the freezer, and I started
I'm going to need
around,
that,
who the hell is Dave? I called the guy that owned the place, and he says, where's my truck? And I said, who's Dave? And he said, where's my truck? I said, it's on fire in front of my house if you don't tell me who Dave is.
Yeah, we're going to get to the bottom of this right now, yeah.
Anyway, Maggie took off with the ice cream man to Vegas, left me with a 3-year-old daughter, and boy, talk about hitching your giddy up, to speak a little rodeo for you.
Ooh, he's speaking rodeo, Hailey. Okay.
Here
awesome.
I am, an active dope fiend. I got a construction company. I got this property on Shea Boulevard, and I can't shuffle it all because now Maggie's gone, so it's all on me. And I didn't know what to do, so I got to find a mom for this girl.
Yeah, I need some help. I better find a new girl, quick.
I was in my lawyer's office, and I walked in. I said, hey, who's the chick out there with the cool eyes? And he said, she's my secretary, and if she goes out with you, I'm firing her. So I took her out to lunch, and we got married about 6 months later.
6 months later, you were married.
Right. And she was a great mom, but she was pregnant. I didn't know that. And she said, I'm going to have a boy.
So she was pregnant already before?
No.
Okay. All right.
She got married. I think she got pregnant before we got married, but that doesn't matter.
Yeah, it doesn't matter.
Anyway, she said, we're going to have a boy. And Okay, let's try
There
it.
we go, yeah.
And, my wheels fell off. It was like, oh boy, I always wanted a son. There's an old Kenny Rogers song said, I always wish I had a son just to teach him not to.
Okay.
So
you know that song, Hailey? Hailey likes country. You into that, Kenny?
I don't know that song.
Okay.
It's on the Gambler album.
If I heard it, I'll probably know it. I'm just not very good.
But
like that, so.
I was like, I got to make some serious changes here. I'm going to have a son. And when he was born, he was real sick, and they were talking about brain damage and stuff. And I was like, whoa, wait a minute.
Yeah, hold
this
up.
is incorrect.
Yeah.
He's in this incubator, and I'm high as hell looking down at him. And I was like, look, I don't know why this kid's sick, God. Let him be okay. Put it on me. And the wheels really fell off.
Yeah, yeah.
I couldn't get high enough, and I couldn't get straight. I didn't know what to do. And, he got out of the hospital. My wife took him and my daughter and moved back to her family's ranch in Cochise County, whose neighbor was the Cochise County sheriff.
Okay.
And she told me, she said, don't come down here. They'll either bury you across the line or put you in jail for the rest of your life. And I'm like, holy shit.
Dang.
Here, yeah. Okay.
I just
spiraled.
Yeah. I was at a Circle K one morning, and I'd ripped off this contractor for about $3,000 or $4,000.
Yeah.
And
I'm gonna need that. Thank you.
Right. Yeah. And he shows up with his whole crew. Going into Circle K before work, and I thought, oh, this is not going to end well at all. So I split, and, I heard sirens, and I know they were coming for me, so I ducked behind the shopping center. And Maggie, the wife that I went to South America with, she used to get a DUI every year. And I used to have to take her to AA meetings. Back then, you go to 5 AA meetings and they drop it.
Yeah.
And
times have changed.
Awesome.
Now you don't go to 5 AA. You don't go to 5 AA meetings. You do 5 years in prison. That's the change.
But anyway, I saw this door with a AA insignia on it. I thought, I remember bringing Maggie here. And there was a bunch of us that had significant others that had to go to meetings, because we'd all sit out back, smoke dope, drink beer, and wait for the meeting to get over, and then we'd all go to the bar.
Yeah.
And I walked up and knocked on the door, and I always tell newcomers, if you see an AA sign, you don't have to knock on the door. If the door is locked, they're closed. If it's open, go on in. And I knocked on the door, and this old guy opened the door, and he looked at me, and he said, can I help you? I said, probably not. I said, I'm just sick of being me, dude. And he said, well, come on in. Let me buy you a cup of coffee. And he gave me a cup of coffee, and he disappeared. And I found out later he was the treasurer of the club. It was the Valley Alano Club. And he was doing April's books.
Yeah, he
so
had all the money
on the counter, on the desk. And he's calling all these old guys saying, there's some crazy biker dude in here. I know he's here to rob us. You got to get down here. I'm scared.
Yeah. I mean,
that's funny.
And, when we get to our first meeting, usually we crawl our way in there. We're definitely not on a winning streak. We've usually exhausted all alibis. I know that I literally crawled into my first meeting, and, so you have this dude. I mean, you're a pretty big dude, and we briefly went through your story, but there's a lot in there. And if all the listeners all across the nation and the world who listen to Sanctuary Radio, if you really listen to his story, there's a lot that's really in there that he doesn't have to say. That if you're one of us, you know exactly what that time period was like. You know exactly
right.
what comes with that type of lifestyle and living and being in for so long. And so, you got this. Was he an old timer that was counting the money?
Oh, yeah. They were all old.
They were all old.
They came in one after the other, and they looked at me and kind of scowled, and they walked into the office. And then they came back out, and they got coffee, and they sat around in this card room, they called it. And finally, this little short guy came walking in, and had a pipe in his mouth, and he's grumbling about something. Everybody's like, hi, Bill. And he looked at me and his, and he walked on into the office.
The old timers weren't very nice back in the day at all.
No, they're mean.
Yeah, they are, huh, Hailey?
First thing they do is rip the cushion off the pity pot, man.
Yeah.
We're here for business. And he came back out, and he got some swizzle sticks from the coffee station and clipped one with with his fingernail clippers and mixed them all up, and he walked around, and he ended up with the short straw. So he said, "Oh, crap," and he threw it in the trash, and he walked away, and I thought, he's the one that's going to call the cops.
He's like, all right, they were drawing straws for who's got to call the cops and file the report.
Anyway,
Oh my gosh.
he came back, and he threw this big book on the table. Well, I didn't know it was a big book. It was just a big blue book, and he threw it down, and he said, "This is a big book of Alcoholics Anonymous. There's answers to questions you don't have yet in here." And I'm like, "Yeah." He said, "Do you read?" I said, "Dude, I can read like a motherfucker."
Yeah.
And he pointed up on the wall, and he said, "These are the steps of Alcoholics Anonymous. These are the steps we take so that we can have a functional life. You ready to take these steps?" And I was like, "Dude, whoa,
like, whoa,
slow down.
Yeah, calm down.
What's up now?" And he says, "We don't have time to fuck around here." He says, "Step one says we admit we're powerless over alcohol, our lives have become unmanageable. Do you understand that?" I'm like, "Oh, yeah, sure." And he says, "Do you admit that you..." I said, "Whoa, stop right there, dude. You can catch me with a steeple hanging out of my ass. You will not get me to admit I've been by a church." And he looked at me, and he kind of shook his head, and he said, "Ward, I need a little help over here."
No, he called in, and he's like, "Oh, I need another one of the homies for this dude."
Well, and all these guys were just sitting there, looking at me, listening to Bill. They were judging Bill, not me, you know. And Ward came over, and he tried to talk to me for me. He says, "I think we need to go backwards with this guy." And he says, "Is your life manageable?" I said, "Oh, yeah." He says, "It's Cinco de Mayo, dude. What are you doing in an AA club?"
Yeah. Because if you were manageable, that's like one of the top 3 party days of the year.
Right.
So if you end up, because that's a sobriety date, since it's on Cinco de Mayo, and if you end
up
up
the day after,
the day of, so because usually what do we tell ourselves? We're like, "Fuck, I'm gonna get high today, one more good one, and tomorrow tomorrow's gonna be the day." And then we wake up and we say, just tomorrow, right? But Cinco de Mayo especially, that's a great justification, and you still end up over there at the Alano Club, man. Yeah. And so they go in reverse, and what happens from there when they're talking about step one?
Step one is basically, you got to admit that you fucked it all up.
Mm-hmm.
It's not life threw you a bad pitch. You walked away from the batter's box, man. You weren't there when you needed to make a decision. And if you did, you probably made one based on self and getting out of here.
Mm-hmm.
And, we went through the book. He opened the book. He says right here this, says right here that. You need to read this whole book, and you need to understand it, because, it'll save your life. And, we went through step one. I admitted, my life is a total wreck. And it's behind alcohol and drugs. I mean, I shouldn't be here. I should be running a bank or something. I mean, I'm a smart guy.
Yeah.
I'm a big, strong, smart guy. And I'm looking at these feeble old men sitting there. Yeah. I'm like, I don't belong here either.
I'm in the wrong place right now.
But they had something. They had an aura about them. There was like a peace that they exuded.
Yeah.
And even behind all their gruffness, they had love.
You could feel it, huh?
They cared.
Yeah.
They gave a shit whether or not, and I mean, a couple times that day, Bill would get angry at me, and he'd say, "Look, there's a goddamn bar at the end of the shopping center. You can go down there anytime you want. The door opens. It's not locked. You can leave."
Yeah, don't get it twisted. You can go there if you want. And that's what they used to say, which, Hailey, I wouldn't recommend this nowadays with fentanyl, but they would, back in the day, they'd be like, "Oh, you don't think you're one of us?
Go drink some more."
Yeah, go have a couple drinks and let me know how that works out for you. Go test drive that
Here's
theory.
$5. First one's on me.
Yeah, right? I mean, that's what they used to do, Hailey.
Yeah.
I mean, we know this, right? But now fentanyl, that could be your last one, right? We would never recommend that to anyone now. But back in the day, the old-time OGs were ruthless.
Right.
Oh. They didn't play around. But that's probably exactly what you needed.
It was because I had an excuse for everything in my life. I had an excuse for life. What I didn't have was any basis of reality. It was all, with Shane being born, and it occurred to me when I finally got the son I thought I always wanted was, I can't teach him anything. What am I teaching about? Sling dope, steal, be a hustler.
Right.
Yeah.
That's nothing to teach a kid, man.
Yeah.
And I desperately wanted to be something that could be of service to him. It wasn't I didn't come into this program wanting to fix me. I came into this program wanting to become something that was worthy, and it occurred that they explained to me in no uncertain terms, you're not going to get fixed here. You're going to change here. If you don't change, you won't change. But there's no quick fix.
Yeah.
So, we got through step 1, and step 2 was like, what?
You're going to believe in this power that's going to restore me to sanity.
Well, I said I was drugged to a Baptist church, Wednesday night for prayer meeting, Saturday afternoon for, Youth for Christ.
Did you do that growing up for years? Hailey, you did that too, right? You were in church school and stuff like that. So was I. I mean, I was an altar boy, the whole nine.
I didn't belong there.
Do you think that belief or that experience of religion when you were younger? Because I know Hailey's path, Keith, just a little history with her. She's worked the steps many, many times, sponsored women, the whole nine. But her path has evolved because, recovery's progressive. Her path has evolved to more of a religious, spiritual-ish type specific path, and it works for her.
Right.
When did you celebrate 5 years, Hailey? Wasn't it recently? Was it 5 years?
October 27th.
Yeah, she just got 5 years as well. But do you think that beginning exposure to religion helped you at all in any way when it came to working the steps?
It certainly didn't hurt.
Yeah,
it really didn't.
Right.
I questioned religion from the jump.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I remember it was like I asked my grandma one thing, because I said my grandma pretty much.
Yeah, you bounced around from your grandma's house to.
I said, if Adam and Eve had 2 sons, where'd they get their wives?
I just asked that question the other day.
You did, Hailey?
Yeah.
She's like, well,
I think that they had babies in the garden before God condemned them out.
Anyway, she says, you got to ask Reverend Edwards about that.
Yeah.
And I remember I went in there, and after church Sunday, everybody shakes his hand, and I asked him that, and he looked at me like I was the Antichrist.
Yeah.
He's like, all right. I don't know what you're going to do with him, Minnie. That was my grandma's name.
Yeah.
I don't know what you're going to do with him, Minnie, but he needs a lot of help.
Yeah. Well, he wasn't wrong. He wasn't wrong.
Well, no, but he didn't answer my question either, and he was supposed to be the go-to guy there. Yeah. And, it's like, I remember I asked one time, I said, if we're judged by this life, don't we get a reset? It doesn't make sense.
I need a mulligan.
But I
so when
come to believe that I'm a spiritual person stuck in a religious world.
Yeah, and so for me personally, it's, religion is organized and spirituality is an experience.
Right.
The book shows me how to experience God. Exactly. And when I identify that experience, then my job is my action steps are to introduce those things into my lifestyle on a day-to-day basis as much as I possibly can, because that gives me the least amount of time to act like a jackass, because I'll take advantage of those opportunities daily.
And then you share that with other men.
And because that's another way I experience God. Right.
But you don't have to go to any particular church or call God by any particular name,
because that's the experience. It's your personal relationship, right? And so what's crazy is as we're talking right now, and we're talking about steps 1, 2, 3, and 4, which we just talked about 2. We're going to talk about 3 and 4, Hailey. This is all his first meeting. I mean, he's still drinking that first cup of coffee.
Oh, they don't fool around.
Yeah, and so if we look I think we're all familiar with Back to Basics. I've taught Back to Basics. I'm sure you've done it many times, Keith.
Right.
That's what they used to do.
Yep.
3 or 4 3 hours or 1 hour sessions, or maybe had the 3, 2, whatever. They used to do it in like 4 days. the whole steps, go sponsor someone, figure this out by helping somebody else.
Exactly.
Right. And the success rate was astronomical, right? They had like over a 50% success rate.
The answers will come if your house is in order.
Right. So let's clean up your house real quick and go help someone clean up their house. Right. And that was the way it was. And so here you are, you know, really you just ducked into that meeting because you had a whole bunch of contractors looking for your ass right there in that moment.
I was on my way to Mexico. I was just going to write it off. I was going to go to Mexico, drink myself to death, find some 21-year-old cutie. And
sounds good.
Yeah, but it just the wheels fell off again, you know.
Yeah, and they fell off in the front of the Olano Club.
Right, behind it, actually, behind it.
Yeah. And so when they start talking about this your first time, and they hit you with step 3 and 4, what were you thinking during that period?
Well, step 3, you know, it's a decision. Yeah. You know, it's like it's not an event; it's a decision. You know, are you willing to do this? and I was hesitant until, you know, Bill did that bam, bam, bam on the table with his finger, you know, said, God, as you understand him, not as you've been told, not as you've read, right this very moment, the power, the spiritual being, or whatever you want to call it, that got you in here today, are you willing to trust it? And I was like, wow. Yeah, I can roll with that.
Yeah, yeah.
So then he says, okay, well then we got to embark on this journey, and it's the 4th step.
Yeah,
and we always play cards in there, and they had a sheet of paper, and they fold it in half, and he turned the paper over, and he said, make a list of people, places, and things that pissed you off. People, places, and things.
No, so you went right into the 4th step right there. An hour later, you're already in the 4th.
That's probably 2 or 3 hours.
Yeah.
But
did they break out the asset liabilities, or they went right into resentments? Okay.
No.
All right.
He just said, you got to make a list here. I got to take a crap. When I get back,
it better be done.
You better have something on here. So, you know, I was sitting there, and all these old guys, you know, they heard the whole thing. They're all staring at me like, pick up the pencil, stupid, you know. Yeah. So, you know, I was like, my adopted mom, my real mom, you know, the cops, the lawyers, this, and this. And Bill came out a few minutes later, and he looked at it, and he said, where are you? And I looked at him, and I said, here, Scottsdale, Arizona, Valley Alano Club, right?
No, he said, yeah.
He said, no, where are you on this list?
And I think that's the one so common. You know, I know Hailey had a sponsor that held her hand, right, and coddled her. But it would work for her, right? And everyone's a little different. We've talked about this many times, but it worked for her. She probably would have pushed and bucked and ran, and everybody's different. And I had a sponsor who told me shit I needed to hear. Right. And I didn't like him for it at times, and I didn't want to hear it, but he was right every time. Right. And so when it gets to the 4th step, I think it's so common in my own experience and the experience I've had working with a ton of guys that when you do that resentment part, you forget to put yourself on there. And that is the biggest one, especially you have to heal from that. You have to correct that. You have to fix, amend that relationship with self and the perception of self and the way you see self when you look at yourself in the mirror. Right. And so did they break you right into the fears right after that? And did you go right down the road?
We spent the rest of that day, you know, going to meetings, because they had like 5 meetings a day there. And Bill went to every meeting with me, and there was usually 1 or 2 other guys there. And that evening at the 8 o'clock meeting, you know, I think we were talking about fears. Yeah. And we went in there, and this old guy came up to speak, and he was kind of dragging one leg and had a crippled up arm. And he went up to the podium, and he said, hi, my name's Fast Steady Sutterth, and I can't tell you how many times a woman's ass in a whiskey glass made me act like a horse's ass. But I didn't have to wake up this morning and say, who are you, where are we, and what did I tell you my name was? Today I'm a reasonably happy man, and I have to thank the program Alcoholics Anonymous and the men that helped me get here. And I was like, that dude's my real dad. Yeah. He's my real dad. I know he is.
Yeah, he's got to be.
So
that's funny.
But those experiences right there are so important because it's that fellowship. It's the relatability. It's seeing men that you know just from that one sentence, that one introduction, that that they are like you, and that if they can do it, that you can do it too, right?
Exactly.
And that propelled. You've been sober now 40 years from that moment, right?
Yeah.
And so when we look over the last 40 years, you're still active. And we know I've had a couple short conversations with you, and you have the privilege of doing a lot of recovery still today.
Oh, yeah.
And sponsoring men and being around and speaking and being at meetings and sharing your experience. And you got one hell of a story like we all do. But the most important part is this aspect of it now. And so when we look over the last 40 years, right? And we look at the fun and the successes. So why don't you share, because I also want to talk about the tragedy, and I want to talk about the failure for a little bit, because I think it's important for people to hear, because when we talk a lot of times, I always want to share just like how great things are, but it's so important for people to hear, Hailey. Me and you talk about this all the time, Hailey. We have to share our struggles, and we try to do that as much as we can so people know that this thing doesn't go away and life will still happen. The difference is I don't use behind those events today. Right. I try to add something to the occasion and the solution. So, but let's first talk about some of the fun you've had over the last 40 years and some of the successes that you've had.
Oh, I've traveled all over. I've spoken all over the country. They celebrate recovery different in every state. Yeah, it's really. Were you
a circuit speaker or anything like that?
Nah,
or
I've spoken at a bunch of conventions and things. Yeah. But no, I'm out.
Yeah, whatever.
I'm not one of those guys.
Yeah, okay.
I don't want to be one of those guys. It's like
Jason. No, I'm just kidding.
I don't even want to be around the Midwest. It's like I remember him.
You're trying not. Yeah, you're definitely turning down speaking engagements in Chicago.
Right.
Yeah. There's some stuff. There's just no statute of limitations on.
Yeah, I hear that.
But no, I got divorced from that lady that I was married to, Shane's mom, on my 10th anniversary. They were throwing a party for me at my home group, and she sat out back by the door and told everybody my parade of sins when they came in.
Oh, you think he's so great?
Yeah, let me tell you what kind of asshole he really is, you know. And I was like, my sponsor, Bill, was there, and he came over and he told me, he says, don't let it bother you. And I said, it doesn't anymore. It really doesn't. I said, you people know I have the capacity to be a total pain in the ass, but you love me anyway. I wish she still did. But, this was 30 years ago. I left there. It was a 8:30 meeting, and I left there about 10 o'clock, and I drove down to Sky Harbor and bought a round trip ticket to San Diego for, it was like $45. Yeah. And I was San Diego, and I just took a cab down to the Strand, and I sat there and I cried and I laughed and I reviewed the last 10 years of my life, and it was like, wow, this is really something. And this head shop behind me opened up, and they turned the stereo on, and it was Truckin' by the Grateful Dead. Oh, yeah. What a long, strange trip it's been. And I thought, I got a long way to go yet, man. Yeah. So I came back and I said, look, let's just get divorced. Let's not fight about it. Yeah. And we did, and life went on. We shared custody with Shane for 3-4 months, and then he showed up one day, on the shuttle with a BMX bike and a whole duffel bag full of clothes. And I'm like, what's this? He says, Dad, I don't need Band-Aids on my knees. I need you to show me how to fix my bike. I was like, dude, I got to call your mom. So I called her, and she said, look, don't say anything bad about me. I hope you stay sober. I don't want anything to do with you, and I'm not paying you child support. And I'm like, cool. That's it?
Yeah, okay, good.
I can run with that.
So now it's you and your son. And
single dad, yeah.
Single dad with your son. And
loving every minute of it.
Because you're available and you're present and you're able to be a father today.
And he went to all the AA stuff with me. I think he's 10, 11 years old. And, we go to the campouts. And I was just digging life. I was really loving it.
Yeah, and so the successes just continue to come in your life, and you know, we were talking a little bit before just about watches and about making jewelry and cars and motorcycles and Porsches and you know, all those shiny things. You know, I like those things, but it's not the happiness that the program, those things came with my life in recovery. But the happiness,
it's not about recovery.
No, and the recovery gave me inner true happiness, and I think that we all have, all three of us. I know we have. The other stuff is just nice to have, and I do like, you know. But the happiness comes from being a good father today, you know, and being a good man and a friend and a brother and a coworker, and that's where the happiness comes. But life still happens through this period of time over the last 40 years for you, and especially recently in your life, and you've been able to continue to stay sober through it. So why don't you just share a little bit about what life's been like for you recently?
Recently? Oh.
Or, I mean, you could share just about...
Yeah, one of the most pronounced things in my recovery was I was probably 20 years sober, I guess. And a buddy of mine called, said, hey, I need some help, blah, blah, blah. So I went out and I was helping him teach these guys how to frame apartment complexes. And I ran a saw through my left hand.
Ooh.
And
okay.
Wow.
You know, well, you got the fingers still on there.
Yeah, we were right across from Scottsdale Hospital. And
Thank God.
Yeah, you know, he ran me over in his truck. He ran in there screaming, yelling, help, help, help. And I walked up to this lady. She's like, can I help you? I said, I need to see a doctor. She said, we need to fill out this paperwork. And I took the T-shirt off my hand and blood shot across it. She's like, stat.
Yeah, you're right in.
And, you know, I was like, what am I going to do? I can't. How can I do anything with one hand? And this doctor came in, and they had some new non-narcotic painkiller that made my hand feel like it was in ice. And I was like, thank you, God, because I was afraid they were going to give me morphine or something like that.
Yeah.
And this doctor walked in, and I was looking at my finger, and he said, what are you doing? And I said, what the fuck do you care? It's my hand. Well, the first doctor came in and said, I'm going to sign this paper. We're taking your fingers off. I said, who are you, Dr. Mengele or something? Get the hell out of here. I got insurance, man. I want to see a real doctor.
Yeah, I need a real doc.
And this guy came in, and I said, well, you know, it's my hand. He said, well, I'm your surgeon, and I'm a Christian. And I was like, oh, fuck. You know, I said, he said, I want to pray before I do anything. I said, go ahead. I've been praying since the saw stopped. And he looked at me and he busted out this big smile. And he said, you know, God's will, my skill, and that attitude of yours, I'm going to fix your hand. So I've got a hand that's like a lot of people. It looks good. It's dysfunctional. It's got no feeling in half the fingers.
But it looks like, I would never have known if you didn't share that.
Yeah, if you look at it close, it's like, wow, what happened to all those fingers?
Yeah.
But, you know, that happened. My ex-wife that I went to South America with got murdered in front of her two children. I ended up being a single dad or custodian for them for almost a year. You know, it's just...
You've had multiple kids show up at your door from your past you didn't know about. I mean,
yeah, one Christmas morning or Christmas Eve morning, there's a knock on the door, and I was cooking, and I told one of Debbie's kids, I said, hey, go see who's at the door. And he came back, and he looked at me, he says, somebody in a uniform. I said, what, like a cop? And when I said that, Deb's other kids all split out the back door.
Yeah, we got to go.
And he said, no, like a soldier. And I said, what? And I went over, I opened the door, and the guy saluted me, and he said, Lieutenant Bulba, United States Air Force, I believe you're my father. And I was like, whoa, Shane, get out here. And Shane came around the corner, and the two of them locked eyes, and they looked like twins.
Oh, you knew right away. It wasn't even a question.
Oh, no, when I saw him, I was like... Holy shit.
Yeah, you're like, yeah, that checks out.
And then since then, I've had a daughter call me, and she was pissed at her mom, and her mom finally said, I think your dad's name's Keith Simpson. And she tracked me down and called me, and she's like, you know, you're my dad, and I hate my mom, and my dad's this, and my dad's... I said, you know, you're saying that right. That's your dad. I'm not your dad. I'm a sperm donor, okay? I don't even remember what your mother looks like.
Yeah.
You know, I know I was with her, but I liked her little sister better. That's what I remember. So, and then last year, I got a phone call from this, or a message on Facebook from another lady from Indiana, and she's 6 months younger than my oldest daughter, and they look like twins. Yeah. All my kids look exactly alike.
Yes, it's hard to deny that.
Sounds like my dad's story.
It does, right? I didn't want to bring it up.
Yeah, it sounds like my dad.
It sounds like your dad. Yeah,
I had a lot of siblings just show up on our doorstep. We all look identical too. Same thing. You can tell they're Jim Bobs.
Yes, you can. And so, but the good news is now you have the ability, to be in their life when.
Definitely.
And that's only because you were willing and honest and open-minded in the beginning to work this program, but also continue to work it through the successes, because a lot of times we experience success in our life and then we take the wheel back and then we run it to the ground. Yeah. But you've stayed engaged in the program for the last 40 years, but this disease. You got to
remain humble to a point.
Sure.
Right.
It's like I'm blessed with these gifts. I worked hard for them, but I'm blessed with them. There's no reason that I have them more than you have them. I was just at the right place at the right time with the right attitude. So I need to be grateful, and I can't be stingy with them. Yeah.
Right.
It's like recovery. That's why I base everything on that. It's like I was freely given this. I have to freely give it away.
Sure. And that's what you've continued to do over the last, 40 years, and you've had other events and a lot of death that's happened and overdoses and so many different things. And the difference today with those events in all of our lives is when those things happen, we get to be there and support our family instead of, bring down the occasion or contribute to the problem. Right. And that's the difference of recovery. And I'm sure the promises have materialized over and over and over in your life. So many different times. And so at some point, though, it's a direct result of the program. And so at some point, you wrote a book. It's called Function by Default. And why don't you share a little bit about the book with us?
It's a bathroom book. It's short essays, basically. Just take it to the bathroom with you when you go in there and sit down and read a chapter. I was, when my ex, Maggie, got murdered, the lady that helped me through this, the school psychologist, asked me if I'd work with some troubled kids. Yeah. And I was like, sure. So I developed, all the chapters in here are actually like lesson plans. And, you could get suspended or terminated from the school district, or you could come to my after-school classes for 6 weeks.
Right.
So it started off just 6 different lessons, and it morphed. And I talked to a lot of people in recovery about it. I based a lot of it on my recovery, like, the difference between feelings and emotions. People say, I used to trick them, and I say, hey, how many of you have ever felt angry? And they all raise their hand. I was like, you can't feel anger. Anger is an emotion. You act angry. You can't feel angry. Anger is a response or a reaction to a negative or painful feeling. And their eyes cross, and they say, what? And you explain it to them, and it's like you see these light bulbs going off all around the room, one at a time, just bing, bing, bing. And I felt so blessed that I could offer these troubled kids something they could relate to.
Yeah.
And I still get Christmas cards. I don't remember who they are. I wouldn't recognize them if they came up to me. But I made a difference in some young people's lives, and that matters to me.
It sure does. And we get that reward, right? It's that, the book talks about being spiritually intoxicated, right? And it's one of my favorite things, and it's actually in As Bill Sees It on my date of birth, July 30th, and it talks about, I'll just paraphrase it, like we're prospectors, and our pick strikes gold, right? And we're so happy, a joy, that a release that we're looking for, and we found a solution to our addiction, and all we have to do is mine for this gold for the rest of our life and give away the entire find. And I felt that way, and that's what we all continue to do. But this book, and I like how you call it a bathroom book. And what's important is that it's got several different chapters to it, and that they're real simple and they're real easy, right? And they're quick reads. It's got implementation, discovery, clarification, the action phase, the reunification, the education, the change, the sponsorship, the sharing, the discipline. It's everything that recovery teaches. When we look at these things and we see the big book, and the big book gives us the steps, the guidelines, the directions, right? That's the foundation. But what we're also looking for is the outside material that we introduce into our program that gives us the ability to add those extra tools that we need, right? There's some books that I really like. I like the Success Principles by Jack Canfield. I like the Tony Robbins Awakening the Giant from Within. I like the 4 Agreements, right? Like those things I introduce, and I'm going to read this book. And I'm going to use it, right? I'm going to use all the stuff that I need to create a full program of recovery that works for me.
Take what you need, leave the rest, man.
And that's what it's all about, right? And I think that's what we've all done is we've taken the foundation from the steps, we've introduced it into our lifestyle through action, and then everything else that we've gained from others, mainly who've shown us through their lives the solutions and the suggestions of them that we've tried, the groups that we teach, the groups that we've been in, the books that we've read. We take all these things together and it becomes a full program of recovery, and then our life becomes a reflection of it.
Exactly.
And it's just amazing. I'm coming up on 5 years, and it's unreal what these last 5 years have given me. And then I have someone on the show like yourself, and I get to meet a new friend today, and I get to see the last 40 years and hear about it and see that I can do this for 40 years through you, right? And you got a Rolex on, man, and you're speaking my language, and I like that shit. You know what I mean? And so if there was one thing that you could leave all of our viewers with, and I know I'm putting you on the spot, if there's one thing you could say, or if it's, a couple sentences, or just something, a message that you just wanted a newcomer to hear, or an old timer to hear, or someone in their first year to hear, what's that one thing that you would say to them, or that one thing that someone said to you that you'll never forget?
It's corny, but don't quit before the miracle, man.
Yeah.
The first time I heard that, I was like, oh, come on, man. What kind of shit is this?
Yeah.
But it's true. It's like you can't sit around and anticipate and wait for the miracle. The miracle just, you wake up one morning and look in the mirror, and it's like, dude, we can do this. I know we can.
Right.
Yeah.
That's the miracle.
Yeah, and a lot of times when you realize that miracle, it's a spiritual experience of the educational variety. When you say, I haven't experienced, I haven't experienced God yet, and you say, well, when was the last time you've been sober for a year, 6 months, 90 days? When was the last time you were able to be there for your kids? When was the last time you got a promotion, or held a job, or had money in the bank, or were able to do any of these things? And you go, shit, never. And you say, well, ever since you made that decision in step 3 to let God get into your life, and you put some action behind it, those things have happened. What do you call that? And you go, holy, the miracle, right? And all those things, that those mantras, or those sayings in the program, dude, they're so meaningful if you stick around long enough and you see the miracle. Yeah. So it's been a pleasure to have you on the show today, Keith, and I'm sure that we'll see you again, and I can't wait for those moments. But for all of our listeners out there all across the world and the nation, please continue to support the podcast, subscribe, reach out to us. Hailey, where can they find us?
They can find us on TikTok, Instagram, Facebook, YouTube, all at Sanctuary Recovery Center.
And if you have a loved one desperately in need of recovery, or they're struggling, or anybody that you know, please reach out to us. We will take you in. We will find you a place. We will not turn you away. All you have to do is call, reach out. That's why, Keith, we tell our sponsees in the very beginning to call us every day. We want to get them in the habit of to pick up the phone, man, to call, because that is the hardest step, and we want people to get in the habit of doing that.
Habit is like a cable. We weave a thread of it every day until we can't break it.
That's right.
So make it a good habit.
Ooh, I like that.
Yeah, it's the consistency of action that creates an identity, and that identity is one we can be proud of. And when we're proud of the person that we are, we don't want to change the way we feel.
Exactly.
And it's all about that attitude
Perfect.
of gratitude. So for everyone out there, continue to follow us. If you want to be on the show, continue to send the messages. We'll get you on. We want everyone to come on this platform, share their message of hope and an opportunity for someone. If one person reaches out from this episode, man, that's what it's all about. So continue to like, subscribe, and follow. And a new episode every week of Sanctuary Radio. Be on the lookout for it. And for everyone, continue to let your actions display the love you have for the people in your life. So thanks for being on the show, Keith.
Thank you for inviting me. You guys have a wonderful day, man.
Thank you.
We'll see you next time.